Hello, my young artists. I'd like to read you a story today called Action Jackson. It's based off of the artwork of pop artist Jackson Pollock and those splatter paintings that we've seen of his. This book was written by Greenberg and Sandra Jordan and illustrated by Robert Andrew Parker. Let's read. Action Jackson. In the afternoon, Jackson Pollock puts on his paint-splattered boots and walks across the yard. The wind blows in from Gardiner's Bay, bringing the scent of salt marshes and sea lavender. His eyes miss nothing. Sunlight on the tree branches, tangled stalks of blackberry bushes, beetles crawling in the grass underfoot. Caw, caw! The crow he tamed flies down and lands on his shoulder. His border collie, Gip, runs in circles demanding a walk across the fields and down a country road to a wide sandy beach. But Jackson turns and keeps going. The gray weathered barn used to be filled with rusty machinery, old fishing gears and broken tools. Now it's his art studio, a place for painting. Some artists put a canvas on an easel or hang it on a wall. Not Jackson. He spreads his out like a sheet, smoothing it flat with his large hands. He wants his painting to be big, big as the sky out west where he grew up, flat as the marshlands behind the house. Sunlight pokes through the cracks in the boards and flies buzz in the dusty studio air. Sliding doors rattle in their frame. He sits, silent, on the floor, staring at the blank canvas. Some artists cover the canvas with a base coat of white paint. Not Jackson. He wants the paint to soak into the surface, leaving bare patches peeking through the stains of color. Some painters use oil paint or watercolor. Not Jackson. He'll use ordinary house paint from the hardware store to make his painting. Some artists paint pictures of flowers or people or landscapes. Not Jackson. He expresses his thoughts and feelings directly on the canvas, calling it energy and motion made visible. And still he sits surrounded by the cans of enamel, brushes, stiff with dried paint, knives, sticks, and spatulas and canvases, waiting. At last he stands. He chooses a stick and dips it into the can of syrupy paint. Slowly he circles the canvas, stepping around the edges, straddling the corners. Black lines form a tangled web. Now he chooses a brush, working towards the middle. Sprays of water, sprays of color, tan, teal, yellow, and white. An athlete with a paintbrush, he uses his whole body to make the painting. Layers build with each gesture, new colors emerging and blending and disappearing into the wet surface. He swoops and leaps like a dancer, paint trailing from his brush that doesn't touch the canvas. I want to make a longer and longer line. I want to keep it going. Hours go by like minutes. Suddenly he feels exhausted, used up, his inspiration gone. Things get in the way of the flow, like roots blocking a soil line. He puts down the brush and goes into the house to help make supper, his mind filled with thoughts about the wet paintings back in the studio. The next afternoon, Jackson prowls around the canvas studying his work, but he doesn't pick up a brush. Instead, he walks to the beach, past the sandy marshes and the tall spirina grass and the waves that waves in the breeze. He spends hours sitting on a grassy dune watching the gulls. In the barn, the layers of paint dry. Almost a week passes before he dips a brush and begins his dance. What is he thinking? Does he see the sunlit beach, the patterns of waves, the interlacing branches on the trees, or the lush summer grass outside the studio. I don't know where my picture comes from. They just come, and the paint flows. Like the Native American sand painters he saw as a boy out west, he moves around the canvas, coaxing the paint with loops and curves. On the floor, I am much more at ease. I can walk around, work from the four sides, be in the painting. Fireworks splatter of rosy pink, twisting ropes of white, spangles of silver, a lavender glow where pink and blue black meet. Jackson listens to jazz recordings in the evening. He likes musicians who improvise, inventing their own melodies as they play. While he paints, the notes spin over and over in his memory. Swish and swish again. The rhythm of the brush matches the rhythm of the music. If a penny fell out of his pocket, he would leave it. An insect lands in the wet paint, there it stays. Nails and tacks become part of the texture. He caresses the surface with sticky paint stained hands. One, then two, handprints across the canvas. His eyes move up and down, back and forth. With light steps, he followed the sweeps of his brush. He stops in a pool of paint, pauses. Paint, paint, and more paint, dripping, pouring, flinging. The painting has its life of its own, and I try to let it come through. Again, he stops. He climbs a ladder to look down at the whole canvas. His muscles ache, but his eyes, his mind, and his heart know the painting is finished. Some people will be shocked when they see what he has created. Some angry, some confused, some excited, some filled with a happiness they can hardly explain. But everyone will agree, Jackson Pollock is doing something original, painting in a way that no one has ever seen before. This painting is titled Number 1 from 1950. It is called also Lavender Mist. It hangs in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. For the next few days, he and his wife, Lee, plant the vegetable garden. They drive into town in their Model A Ford. He digs for clams on the beach. And on the weekend, their friends drop by for a party. It'll take another week for the thick paint to dry. Then Jackson and Lee will tack the canvas on the studio wall. Jackson sits silent, staring at the blank canvas spread on the floor of the barn, waiting. Soon he will dip his brush in the paint can, lifting it high in the air to begin again. Jackson Pollock was born in 1912 and died in 1956. He is known for these abstract expressionist paintings of paint splattered on the floor. Pollock did believe that his paint was more of a performance, and to see the movement that the paint had when he would even come into the scene as an artist.